talking about Tawny port and the revival of Tawny port, I think in reality there is a very important revival of the awareness about Tawny port in general. This has started some years ago, and Tawny port has been a crucial part, I'm talking about old Tawny port, a crucial part of the port wine business. And it has always been what the port producers or even Portugal understood port was. And for most Portuguese people who drank port, it was Tawny port they were talking about, they were used to. Vintage port and late bottle vintage port, so the more fruity, ruby, early bottled ports, vintage and LBV, were mostly developed for the Anglo-Saxon markets, starting with UK and then later the United States and other markets. And soon that vintage port became the reference for the quality of a port company, and they still are. But at the same time, Tawny port always had an enormous importance, not only in terms of the quality of the wines we were showing, on the diversity of the wines we produce in this region, but also in the volumes that each producer has to offer, and the general volume of the sales of port. Vintage port only accounts for about, if in a declared year, 5% of such of the sales of a port annually. So Tawny port, 10-year-old Tawny, 20, 30, 40, Colheita ports, Tawny ports, and others like now the Reserve Tawny are now a very important percentage and a very high percentage of the sales of port. And the coming to the market of some very, very, very old, mainly 19th century Tawny ports that were small jams hidden in cellars of private farmers or companies, started coming out to the market. Taylor's Scion, Valado, Tributa, New Blee from Graham's, from the Symington family. I'm not trying to avoid any. I'm trying to remember the very, very old from Newport, 1863s, Wiesen Krones, 1863 and 1896, and so many of those created a new momentum to that the producers are taking advantage, in the good sense, to show what the capacity, extraordinary capacity of Tawny ports to be enjoyable. And these are wines that once you open a bottle, they can last for months or years in an open bottle. They've been oxidized all their lives, and that's the style. The capacity of combination in different foods, at different temperatures, at different moments. These are wines that you can savor a glass for a long period of time, and you don't have to worry about how it develops in your glass, because it will be enhanced all the time with the flavors when it opens up in the glass. And I drink them all fresh. I bring them out of the fridge, to be honest. And so the amazing capacity of port to age in cask for so many years, decades and centuries, is being shown on the market like that, also opens up to different palates in different markets. Some markets have problems, especially in Asia, with tannins. So Tawny ports are perfect for some of the spicy food that you have in Asian markets, and also for the problems that some consumers have with tannins. And frankly, the pleasure that these wines give you, both in terms of time, moment of consumption, but also as producer, and me as a producer, in seeing them age and savor the little flavors and the evolution along the time, is extraordinary. And I'm always personally fascinated about it. And so long live port, and long live Tawny port.